sometimes in a role you do immerse yourself and you work to within an inch of your life, and they get their pound of flesh. And
Welcome back to Flavor Report. My name's Joe Winger. Today's conversation is with actor George Gallagher. You've seen him on TV shows, indie films. Now he's on BET Plus, Tyler Perry's show Perimeter. George, thank you for joining us today.
thanks so much, Joe. Thanks for having me.
You've mentioned that you've played some very morally ambiguous roles, both on this current BET show Perimeter, as well as your other projects you've acted in. As a human being, as an actor, after a tough day where you're playing not great people, how do you relax?
Someone the other day remarked about a different film that I did. It was called Altered States of Plaine, and it's about a guy who falls asleep and wakes up in different parts of the world. He doesn't know why it's happening to him, and he resorts to drug-induced insomnia to stay awake. And none of his clothes come with him. It's sort of like like the Terminator or something. It's a very bizarre film, and it balances a lot of psychological aspects. And it was really visceral and dark and intense, and similar. It was with the same director as Over the GW, and a friend of mine who'd been through 4 wars in the Middle East, and he said he was talking to his son, and he's like, "You know something? I tell you this respectfully, but that guy George, he's not the same guy after he did that movie. I'm telling you, you pay a price, And I was laughing when he said that to me, and I think I turned to my wife and I said, "You don't even know the half of it." It was sometimes in a role you do immerse yourself and you work to within an inch of your life, and they get their pound of flesh. And some actors, like, you come out and you shake it off, and sometimes you've got dings in the fender that aren't going away no matter how much you buff them out. And that was a little bit the case. And you hear, not to compare myself to someone as brilliant as, let's say, the great and late Heath Ledger, but they said he went to some pretty dark places on that Dark Knight film. And you wonder, though, did that have a cost or a price on someone's health? Generally, though, that's one example. With Over the GW, the flip side, which would seem to be, it's about a kid who's in a cult-like rehab, and he's physically abused and all other types of abuse on a daily basis for years. He wasn't able to see his family. It was based on a true story. The filmmaker had actually been in one of these programs, and I think he barely attended high school. I think he only went to high school for 1 year. He spent 3 years in rehab 24/7, being supervised and surveillanced around the clock. He wasn't allowed to read for a year because that was a form of some sort of punishment and reprogramming. And I didn't know that it was based on a true story. I just went off the script in my imagination. So for that movie, I was able to laugh between takes, but sometimes people got heated on set, and there were times where you could tell, like, I wasn't being, sensitive to what was going on with the subject, and I didn't put it together at the moment. But it was about something very real and very personal and very destructive and traumatic that people had survived. But as an actor, generally, I just laugh and shake it off, and you walk away, and it's like over. We're playing house, we're playing pretend. And I think if an actor has trouble shaking it, sometimes it has to do with what's going on behind the scenes. The dynamics on set with the crew. Like, there are filmmakers that I've heard that working with them, and I'm not saying this about this film in particular, but the story can sometimes, life imitates art, and sometimes people start to step on each other's toes, and it's and then that shows up a little bit on camera, and we got some real stuff to work with, and it's exciting. The camera eats all that stuff, all that up. Hopefully we all can shake hands and go out for a drink later on and bury the hatchet. But
It sounds like the vibe of your current show is a lot more casual, a lot friendlier than some of those tougher sets. How does that help? Does that inform your performance, or how does that help you have a better experience?
Look, that's set, and I've worked on two projects there now. That, and then a film called 688 that's coming out next year, is one of the most positive environments you could ever step into as an actor. Tyler Perry Productions hires the very best, I think, of the best of people. Like, they're just lovely people. They're all thrilled, happy to be there, kind and gracious, and of service to one another. And it's a privilege to walk onto that set every single day. And a lot of I think major films, you have that experience. Even when I was like struggling to get a job and auditioning, I remember in California and walking on a Paramount. It was just like I had a general audition once for Francis Ford Coppola's casting director for a movie they were doing, and Mr. Coppola wasn't there, but I remember walking and everybody looked so happy, Joe, on that lot. Everywhere I went, the caterers and the craft service people and the transports and the guys in the golf carts that are going, like everywhere you asked, anyone you talked to, they had a twinkle in their eye. Like they had a twinkle in their eye. And I remember turning to a friend of mine who was recurring on a show, on one of those at that studio. And I mentioned that to him. I said, wow, going to Paramount is like incredible. And he said, well, they're all winning the game. Of course. I was like, you're right, and there is that gratitude to know that, for any actors that see this, like, don't forget, like, you get a job for that week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, however long you're working, you're part of the 1%, and you're very lucky, and don't ever forget that no matter what happens. And I certainly don't. I take nothing for granted. It's a privilege.
George Gallagher working on Tyler Perry's new BET Plus show, Perimeter. George, thank you so much for your time today. So now, whether it's a website or it's a social media, what's the best way to stay in touch with you? What's the best way to find out what you're working on next?
Absolutely. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. It's George Gallagher, the number 7. George Gallagher 7 on Instagram, Facebook, George Gallagher. You'll see my face, my picture, and feel free to follow me. Keep in touch. Thanks so much.